Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Easy English Podcast. I'm Hannah, and as always, I'm here with my co-host, Alex. We are so happy to have you with us today for another story-based episode. Today, we are going to listen to a slow, simple story about a family looking for their lost dog, Buster, just before a big storm starts. This is a great way to learn new English words naturally. Hello, Alex.
Hey there, Hannah, and hello to all our listeners around the world. I love today's story because it is full of suspense, but we will tell it slowly so you can understand every word. Plus, we will explain some great vocabulary along the way. So, Hannah, who is in this family?
Well, our story is about the Miller family. There is Mr. Miller, Mrs. Miller, and their 10-year-old daughter, Lily. And, of course, the most important character today is Buster. Buster is their dog. He is a small brown terrier with very long ears and a tail that never stops wagging.
Ah, a terrier. Terriers are known for being very energetic, right? They love to run, dig, and sometimes get into trouble.
Exactly. The word mischievous is perfect for Buster. Let's spell that for our listeners. mischievous. Mischievous. It means someone who likes to play tricks or do slightly bad things, but not in a really harmful way. For example, a mischievous child might hide his sister's toys.
That is a great word. Buster is definitely mischievous. He likes to steal socks, bark at the mailman, and, worst of all, he loves to sneak out of the backyard whenever someone leaves the gate open.
Yes, to sneak out means to leave a place quietly and secretly so that nobody sees or hears you. For example, I tried to sneak out of the room so I wouldn't wake up the baby. But Buster doesn't sneak out to be quiet. He sneaks out because he wants an adventure.
And that is exactly how our story begins. It was a Saturday afternoon. The air was very warm, but it felt heavy. You know that feeling, Hannah? Just before it rains, when the air feels thick and still.
Oh, yes. We call that humid or sticky weather. It often happens right before a big summer storm. On this Saturday, the sky started to change. It wasn't bright blue anymore. It was turning dark and gray. Thick, heavy clouds were rolling in from the hills.
Mr. Miller looked out the living room window. He saw the dark clouds and said, "We need to bring the garden chairs inside. A big storm is coming. Look at those clouds."
Mrs. Miller agreed. She went to the back door and called out, "Lily, please come inside now. It is going to rain very soon." Lily was in her bedroom reading a book. She walked downstairs and asked, "Where is Buster? Is he in the yard?"
That is when the panic started. Mr. Miller went to the backyard to check. He looked near the big oak tree. No Buster. He looked inside Buster's doghouse. No Buster. And then he saw it. The wooden gate at the side of the house was slightly open.
Oh no, the gate was unlatched. To unlatch means to unlock or open a latch, which is a small metal or wooden bar used to keep a door or gate closed. It seems someone forgot to close it properly.
Yes, maybe the mail carrier or maybe one of them when they took out the trash. But the reason didn't matter now. The gate was open and Buster was gone. He had escaped again.
Lily started to cry. "Buster is scared of thunder," she said. "If the storm starts and he is outside, he will be terrified." This is very true for many dogs, isn't it, Alex? Many pets are absolutely terrified of loud noises like thunder and fireworks.
Yes, their hearing is much more sensitive than ours. The word terrified means extremely scared, much more than just afraid. For example, I am terrified of spiders, or in this case, Buster is terrified of thunder.
So the family had to act quickly. The sky was getting darker by the minute. The wind was starting to blow, making the leaves on the trees rustle. Rustle is a great sound word, or onomatopoeia. It describes the soft whispering sound made by dry leaves or paper rubbing together.
I love that word, rustle. R-U-S-T-L-E. You can hear the wind rustling through the trees in our story. It was a warning that they had very little time. Mr. Miller grabbed his car keys, Mrs. Miller grabbed 2 flashlights, and Lily quickly put on her yellow raincoat and boots.
They stood on the front porch for a second, looking at their quiet neighborhood. The street lights were just turning on, even though it was only 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because the sky was so dark. A cold breeze blew across their faces.
We will split up, Mr. Miller decided. To split up means to separate and go in different directions so you can cover more ground. He said, I will drive slowly down the main road. Girls, you walk down the side streets. Keep your eyes open and call his name.
That was a good plan. Walking and driving in different directions gives them a much better chance of finding him. But the wind was getting stronger, and they could hear a low rumble of thunder in the distance. The storm was getting closer and closer.
A low rumble. Rumble is another sound word. It means a deep, heavy, continuous sound, like the sound of a heavy truck driving past, or in this case, distant thunder. When you hear that rumble, you know you have to run for cover.
Yes, indeed. Mrs. Miller turned on her flashlight. The bright beam of light cut through the gray afternoon. She held Lily's hand tightly. They stepped off the porch and onto the sidewalk, ready to start their search. Lily called out in a loud, trembling voice, "Buster! Buster! Where are you, boy?"
The neighborhood felt strange and empty. Most of their neighbors were already inside their houses, closing their windows and preparing for the storm. There was no one else on the street. It was just Mrs. Miller, Lily, and the rising wind. They walked toward the park, thinking Buster might have gone there to chase the squirrels.
And the park was a very logical place to start. Buster loved the park. But before they even reached the park gate, they had to check the spaces around them. Let's talk about some prepositions of place here, because they are so important when you are searching for something. Lily looked behind the thick green bushes near the sidewalk. Behind means at the back of something. The bushes were tall and wide, a perfect hiding spot for a scared little dog.
That is a great word to practice. Behind. For example, I think my keys are behind the sofa, or the sun went behind a cloud. It means you cannot see it easily because something else is in front of it. So Lily was bending down, parting the wet leaves with her hands, looking behind the bushes. But Buster was not there. All she saw was a wet tennis ball and some dry leaves.
Then Mrs. Miller pointed her flashlight across the street. Across is another wonderful preposition. It means from one side of something to the other. In this case, from one side of the road to the opposite side. She shone the light across the street, right onto the neighbor's driveway. She thought she saw a shadow moving near the trash cans.
Ah, across the street. We use across a lot in daily life. He walked across the bridge, or the supermarket is across the road from the bank. It is all about crossing a line or a space. So they looked across the street, and their hearts jumped. Was that Buster? Mrs. Miller called out, "Buster, is that you?" And they quickly walked across the asphalt. But when they got closer, they realized it was just a plastic bag blowing in the wind, a false alarm.
Aw, that is so disappointing. A false alarm is when you think something exciting or dangerous is happening, but it turns out to be nothing. Your heart beats fast for a second, and then you realize, oh, it is just a plastic bag. Lily felt like crying. The wind was getting colder, and she could feel small drops of rain on her cheeks. "Mom, what if we can't find him before the heavy rain starts?" she asked.
Mrs. Miller gave her hand a gentle squeeze. "We will find him, sweetie. Don't worry.
Let's check between the houses. Here's another key word, between. We use between when we talk about a space that separates two things. In a neighborhood, houses are often built close together, leaving a narrow pathway between them. These narrow spaces can be very appealing to a small dog who is looking for a quiet place to hide from the wind.
Exactly. Between is for two things. For example, I am standing between Alex and the door. Or the toy fell between the bed and the wall. It is a very specific kind of space. So Mrs. Miller and Lily walked down the narrow gap between their neighbor's house, Mr. Davis's house, and the next house. The ground there was covered in gravel and it was very dark. Mrs. Miller moved the flashlight beam up and down, checking every corner.
They walk slowly, listening carefully. Sometimes, when a dog is scared, it will not bark. It might just make a tiny whimpering sound. To whimper means to make low, weak crying noises. It is the sound a puppy makes when it is cold, hungry, or frightened. So they stopped between the houses, held their breath, and listened. But they didn't hear a whimper. They only heard the loud rustling of the trees above them.
The trees were shaking violently now. The storm was definitely moving in quickly. They decided to walk towards the corner of the street. At the corner, there was a large mailbox and a big wooden fence. Lily suggested maybe he went under the fence. Under is our next preposition. It means in a position below or beneath something. Like the cat is under the table, or we sat under the tree to get some shade.
Right, under. If Buster was small enough, he could easily squeeze under a gate or a loose board in a wooden fence. The fence belonged to Mrs. Gable, an elderly lady who loved gardening. Lily got down on her knees on the cold, damp sidewalk and peered under the gate. It was very dark under there, but she could see the silhouette of some flower pots. "Buster," she called softly, "are you under there?"
But there was no response. No tail wagging, no barking. She stood up, brushing the dirt off her knees. She felt a bit discouraged. Discouraged is a great word for English learners. It means losing your confidence or enthusiasm. You feel like giving up because things are not going well. Lily was starting to feel discouraged. They had looked behind the bushes, across the street, between the houses, and under the fence, and still nothing.
It is completely natural to feel discouraged in a situation like that, especially with a storm coming. But her mother remained positive. Mrs. Miller said, "Let's keep going, Lily. We haven't checked the park yet. He loves the old oak tree near the playground. Let's look around the playground area." Now, around is another very useful word. It means in various directions or surrounding a place. When you look around, you turn your head in different directions to see everything.
Yes, around gives the idea of a circle or a general area, like we took a walk around the lake, or I looked around the room but couldn't find my coat. So they walked quickly toward the park entrance. The park was completely empty. Usually at this time, there would be children playing on the swings and parents chatting on the benches, but today the swings were just swaying back and forth in the wind, making a creaking sound.
That creaking sound must have made the park feel even more lonely and scary. They walked onto the wet grass. Mrs. Miller shone the light around the slides, around the swings, and around the sandbox. The bright beam of light danced across the empty playground. Suddenly, Lily stopped. She grabbed her mother's sleeve. "Mom, look over there, near the big trash bin."
Oh, this is getting so exciting. Lily saw something near the trash bin. Near is our next preposition. It means close to something, not far away. For example, our school is near the train station, or I sat near the window because I wanted some fresh air. So Lily pointed near the trash bin, which was at the edge of the playground.
Exactly. Near is a very common word we use every day. So they moved quietly toward the bin. The wind was howling now, blowing dry leaves across the grass. The trash bin was a large green plastic container. As they got closer, they saw a shadow. The shadow was moving just a little bit. Mrs. Miller kept her flashlight pointed at the ground so they wouldn't scare whatever was there.
That is a very smart idea. You don't want to shine a bright light directly into a dog's eyes, especially if the dog is already frightened. Frightened means scared or afraid. When there is thunder and lightning, many pets get very frightened and try to hide in small, dark spaces.
Yes, our dog back home always hides in the bathroom when it storms. He gets so frightened. Back in the park, Lily whispered, "Buster, is that you?" She took a slow step forward. The shadow shifted. Suddenly, a little wet nose poked out from behind the trash bin. But, no, it wasn't Buster. It was a tiny gray cat.
Oh, what a surprise! A little cat. The cat gave a soft meow and then quickly ran up a tree. Up is another direction word we use all the time. It means moving to a higher position. For example, the elevator went up to the 10th floor, or we climbed up the hill to see the sunset. The cat ran up the tree to get away from them.
Exactly. The cat went up the tree to feel safe. Lily's heart sank. She thought she had found her beloved dog, but it was just a stray cat. At that exact moment, the first cold raindrop fell right onto Lily's forehead. Splat. Then another one hit her arm. The storm was finally starting.
The suspense is really building now. Suspense is that feeling of excitement or anxiety when you do not know what is going to happen next. It is what makes scary stories or action movies so interesting. We are all feeling the suspense now. Will they find Buster before the heavy rain starts?
I can feel the suspense too, Hannah. Mrs. Miller looked up at the dark clouds. "Lily, we have to hurry," she said. "The rain is starting to fall. Let's check the old oak tree on the other side of the park, and then we must go home." So they began to walk through the park. Through is a wonderful preposition. It means moving from one side of an opening, area, or location to the other.
Yes, through is very useful. Think of walking in a forest or driving in a tunnel. We say, we drove through the tunnel, or the water flows through the pipe. In this case, Lily and her mother were walking through the park, from the playground side, across the grass, to the tree side.
And as they walked through the park, the wind became even stronger. It was pushing against them. They had to walk with their heads down. The rain was not just a few drops anymore. It was starting to fall steadily. Steadily means happening in a regular, continuous, and gradual way. The rain was not stopping. It was slowly getting heavier and heavier.
That sounds so uncomfortable. Walking in the cold rain while worrying about your lost pet. They finally reached the old oak tree. This tree was huge. It had lived in the park for over 100 years. Its branches were very wide, and they actually blocked some of the rain. It was like a giant green umbrella.
Yes, a natural umbrella. Lily and her mother stepped under the branches of the oak tree. It was much drier there. Mrs. Miller shone the flashlight up into the branches, then down around the massive trunk. The trunk of a tree is the main wooden stem. Underneath the tree, there were lots of dry leaves and some old park benches.
Lily called out again, "Buster! Buster, are you here?" Her voice sounded small against the sound of the wind and the rain hitting the leaves above them. They listened closely. For a few seconds, there was only the sound of the storm. But then they heard a very quiet, high-pitched sound. It sounded like a whimper.
A whimper. A whimper is a quiet crying sound that animals or babies make when they are hurt, scared, or sad. It's not a loud bark. It's a very soft, emotional sound. When Lily heard that whimper, her face lit up. She knew that sound instantly. It was Buster's whimper.
Oh, thank goodness. That is the best sound in the world when you are looking for a lost pet. But where was the sound coming from? Lily looked around the trunk of the tree. She didn't see him on the grass. She didn't see him on the benches. Then she noticed a hollow space.
A hollow space is an empty area inside something solid. Some old trees have a hollow section near the bottom of their trunk. It is like a little cave inside the tree itself. Lily fell to her knees on the dry leaves and shone the flashlight inside the hollow trunk.
And what did she see? Two bright, glowing eyes looked back at her, and then a wet nose and a very fast wagging tail. It was Buster! He was curled up inside the hollow tree trunk, trying to stay dry and safe from the scary wind and thunder.
Ugh, what a relief. Relief is a great noun. It is the feeling of happiness when something unpleasant or worrying ends. For example, it was a huge relief when the exam was over. Or, I felt a sense of relief when I found my car keys. Lily felt an incredible wave of relief.
She really did. She reached her arms into the hollow trunk. Buster immediately crawled out and jumped into her arms, licking her face. He was shivering a little bit because he was scared, but he was completely safe and dry.
Mrs. Miller hugged both of them. They were so happy to be reunited.
Reunited is another beautiful word. It means coming together again after being separated. It was a beautiful moment under the old oak tree, even with the storm raging all around them. But now they had a new problem. This storm was getting worse, and they were still in the middle of the park.
Exactly. They had found Buster, but the adventure was not quite over yet. The heavy rain was now pouring down, and they had to get back home quickly. Mrs. Miller said, "Okay, team, we found our boy. Now let's run back toward our house. Keep close to me."
And run they did. Can you picture it? Mrs. Miller, Lily, and Buster all running through the park, with the heavy rain splashing under their boots. To splash is a fun verb, Alex. It means to make water fly around when you hit it. For example, children love to splash in puddles after it rains.
They certainly do. And they were splashing through every single puddle on the path because they were running so fast. The wind was howling behind them, pushing them forward. It was like the storm was helping them run faster. Within just a few minutes, they saw the warm yellow lights of their own street, and then their front porch.
Oh, the front porch? That is the covered area at the entrance of a house. It is such a welcoming sight when you are cold and wet. They ran up the steps, Mrs. Miller unlocked the door, and they all tumbled inside, soaking wet but laughing with joy. They made it just in time.
Yes, in the nick of time. That is a wonderful English idiom. It means at the very last moment, just before it is too late. For example, we arrived at the train station in the nick of time, just as the doors were closing. If they had stayed in the park for 5 more minutes, they would have been caught in a really dangerous thunderstorm.
Exactly. Once they were inside, Mrs. Miller quickly closed the door, shutting out the howling wind and the freezing rain. Buster immediately shook his wet fur, sending water droplets everywhere. Lily laughed and threw a big dry towel over him. They dried him off, and then they dried themselves off.
And then came the best part of any stormy evening. Mrs. Miller made hot chocolate with tiny marshmallows on top. Lily sat on the living room rug with a warm blanket wrapped around her shoulders, and Buster lay right next to her, resting his head on her lap. He was totally exhausted from his big adventure, but he was warm, safe, and loved.
Exhausted is a very useful word. It means extremely tired. After running around the neighborhood and getting lost in a park, Buster was definitely exhausted. I think Lily and Mrs. Miller were exhausted too.
They definitely were, but it was a happy kind of tired. Outside, the rain tapped loudly against the window panes, and the thunder rumbled in the distance. But inside, everything was peaceful and warm. And that is the end of our slow story. What a wonderful happy ending.
It really is.
Now, for the second part of our episode today, let us do a quick breakdown of some of the key vocabulary we heard in this story. This is a great way for our listeners to practice and remember these useful words. Let us start with weather vocabulary, because the storm played a huge role in the story.
Perfect. The first weather word we heard was drizzle. Do you remember when the story started? There was just a light drizzle. A drizzle is very light rain. The drops are very small and it does not feel very heavy. For example, you do not need an umbrella for this drizzle. A light jacket is enough.
But then the drizzle turned into a downpour. That is our next word. A downpour is a very heavy, sudden rain. When it pours, it rains a lot. You might hear people say, "It's pouring outside." This means the rain is coming down very hard and fast. If you go out in a downpour without an umbrella, you will get soaked in seconds.
Absolutely. Soaked is another great word, meaning completely wet. And along with the downpour, we had thunder and lightning. These two often go together, but they are different. Lightning is the bright flash of electricity in the sky. It is visual. Thunder is the loud noise that follows the flash of lightning. It is auditory.
Yes. A good way to remember is you see lightning and you hear thunder. We also use the verb to rumble for thunder. We said thunder rumbled in the distance. To rumble means to make a deep, long, rolling sound. Like when you are very hungry, your stomach might rumble.
That is a perfect example, Hannah. My stomach is actually rumbling a little bit right now. But let us finish our vocabulary first. We also had some great location and neighborhood words in this story. For example, sidewalk.
Ah, yes, the sidewalk. In British English, people call this the pavement. It is the stone or concrete path next to the road where people can walk safely. For example, always walk on the sidewalk, not in the middle of the street.
And along the sidewalk, Lily and her mom looked in alleys. An alley, or alleyway, is a narrow passage behind or between buildings. Sometimes they can be a bit dark, and pets love to explore them because there are often interesting smells or trash cans there.
Yes, Buster thought it was a great place to explore. And finally, we had the word hollow when we described the tree trunk where Buster was hiding. Hollow means having an empty space inside. It is not solid. For example, a pipe is hollow, and some old trees have hollow trunks where small animals can hide from the rain.
That is a really useful word to know. Well, Hannah, we have covered a lot of wonderful words today, from drizzle and downpour to relief and reunited. I hope our listeners enjoyed this cozy story and learned some new English phrases to use the next time it rains.
I am sure they did. It was so much fun sharing this story with everyone. Remember, listeners, you can try practicing these words by writing your own short sentences or even your own short story about a rainy day.
That is a fantastic idea, Hannah. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Easy English Podcast. Stay warm, keep practicing, and we will see you next time.